Welcome, listeners. This is episode 3 in the History's Hidden Gems podcast. We're diving into the fascinating world of the Dutch spice trade, a period that significantly shaped global history. Picture yourself in the 1600s, when spices like pepper, nutmeg, cloves, and cinnamon were worth their weight in gold. These exotic goods didn't just add flavor to food. They also played a critical role in medicine and preservation, making them incredibly valuable. Early days of the spice trade. Our story begins in the early 16th century. At that time, the spice trade was dominated by the Portuguese, who had established a strong presence in the Indian Ocean. They controlled the sea routes to the Spice Islands, known today as the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. The Portuguese held a tight grip on the trade, reaping enormous profits from the high demand for spices in Europe. However, the Dutch were eager to get a piece of this lucrative pie. In 1595, a group of Dutch merchants financed a fleet of ships to sail to the East Indies, led by navigator Cornelis de Houtman. Though the journey was perilous and the expedition faced numerous challenges, including disease and conflict with the Portuguese, it marked the beginning of the Dutch entry into the spice trade. Formation of the Dutch East India Company. Recognizing the potential for immense profit, the Dutch government took a bold step. In 1602, they established the Dutch East India Company, known as the VOC, Verenigd Oostindische Compagnie. The VOC was granted a monopoly over Dutch trade in Asia, allowing it to wage war, negotiate treaties, and establish colonies. This move was revolutionary, as it made the VOC the world's first multinational corporation and one of the most powerful trading entities of its time. The VOC's primary goal was to break the Portuguese monopoly and dominate the spice trade. To achieve this, they needed a strategic base in Asia. In 1619, the Dutch captured the city of Jakarta on the island of Java, renaming it Batavia. Batavia became the VOC's headquarters and the center of Dutch operations in Asia. Trade monopoly and imperial aims. With Batavia as their base, the Dutch set out to establish a monopoly on the spice trade. They focused on the Spice Islands, where nutmeg and cloves were exclusively grown. The VOC used a combination of diplomacy and military force to gain control over these islands. They formed alliances with local rulers, built forts, and, when necessary, fought brutal wars against rival European powers and indigenous peoples. One of the most significant events in this quest for dominance was the Amboina massacre in 1623. The Dutch, fearing a conspiracy between the English and Japanese traders in Amboina, present-day Ambon, executed 20 men, including 10 Englishmen. This brutal act strained Dutch-English relations but secured Dutch control over the lucrative clove trade. By the mid-17th century, the Dutch had successfully established a monopoly over the spice trade. They controlled the production and distribution of nutmeg, cloves, and mace, ensuring that European traders had to buy these spices through them. The VOC's tight grip on the spice trade brought enormous wealth to the Netherlands, transforming it into one of the richest and most powerful countries in Europe. Benefits of the spice trade. The Dutch spice trade had far-reaching effects on both the Netherlands and the world. In the Netherlands, the influx of wealth from the spice trade fueled the Dutch Golden Age, a period of unprecedented cultural, economic, and scientific growth. Amsterdam became a bustling center of trade and finance, with the Amsterdam Stock Exchange becoming one of the world's first stock markets. The wealth generated by the spice trade also funded numerous Dutch explorations and settlements around the world. The Dutch established colonies in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, creating a vast global trading network. They introduced new goods to Europe, such as coffee, tea, and chocolate, changing European consumption habits forever. Imperial aims and legacy. While the Dutch spice trade brought great wealth and prosperity to the Netherlands, it also had darker aspects. The VOC's quest for profit often led to exploitation and violence. Indigenous populations in the Spice Islands were subjected to harsh labor conditions, forced to work on Dutch plantations under brutal conditions. The VOC also engaged in slave trade, transporting enslaved people to work in their colonies. Despite these grim realities, the legacy of the Dutch spice trade is undeniable. It reshaped global trade, paving the way for modern capitalism and multinational corporations. The VOC's innovative business practices, such as issuing shares to investors and establishing a global trading network, influenced future business models and economic systems. Important events in the Dutch spice trade. 1. 1595 The first Dutch expedition to the East Indies, led by Cornelis de Houtman, marks the beginning of Dutch involvement in the spice trade. 2. 1602 Establishment of the Dutch East India Company, VOC, granting it a monopoly over Dutch trade in Asia. 3. 1619 The Dutch capture Jakarta, renaming it Batavia, and establish it as the VOC's headquarters. 4. 1623 The Amboina massacre secures Dutch control over the clove trade. 5. Mid-17th century The Dutch establish a monopoly over the spice trade, controlling the production and distribution of nutmeg, cloves, and mace. Conclusion. The Dutch spice trade was a pivotal chapter in global history. It was a time of great adventure, immense wealth, and significant cultural exchange. While it brought prosperity to the Netherlands, it also had complex and often troubling impacts on the regions involved. Understanding this history helps us appreciate the interconnected world we live in today, shaped by centuries of trade, exploration, and cultural exchange. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Dutch spice trade. Stay tuned for more fascinating stories from history, right here on our podcast.